All right, so UFC 298 is on the way. There's a lot going on in the MMA world. I feel like it's a perfect time to put out this video because, I feel like the last two cards have not really been anything to talk about, and everything else that the MMA community has been involved in is mainly just kind of like dumb drama, following Strickland on his adventures, or hearing about Ian Gary talk about something. It's just been kind of just too drama filled, too clickbaity. It seems like a lot of these people are just very desperate for you know clicks and all that, rather than let's wait until something actually happens and then talk about it, because that's the kind of channel this is. And if you wonder, like, why is this guy post some randomly, it's usually because I'm waiting for something that I actually want to talk about, and then I'll make a video about it. So that's how this channel works. But yeah, the main point of this video is really Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. And Whittaker is in a situation very similar to Volkanovski, because if he were to get finished or even lose the fight, it's going to be a whole idea of what is he going to do with his career now, because it looks like he doesn't have the ability to be champion anymore. And so then at that point he would have to say, well, either he's fighting just to stay like a top 5 guy, and he's just going to stay there, and maybe he'll go up a couple times and then maybe he'll lose and then go back down, cuz that's the situation he's been in ever since he lost his title to Adesanya. He lost, then he would win 2 or 3 fights, then he got the rematch, then he lost again, and then he won 2 fights, and then he fights Dricus, and then he loses. And so now he's in a position where, again, he either goes back through the same cycle again, like he either out jabs, Paulo Costa for a couple rounds, kind of like what he did to Vittori, and then he's just going to work his way up the ladder again, hopefully to at some point get the belt. But which could definitely happen. I mean, the middleweight division is so chaotic that the idea of Robert Whittaker becoming champion again is definitely not crazy. Only in the middleweight division can something like that happen. I mean, I think I heard a stat where the belt in the last, I don't know, maybe year has actually you know has been given to like 4 different people. And so, I mean, because Izzy had it, right, then he lost it to he lost it to Pereira, then he got it back, then he lost it to Strickland, and now Strickland lost it to Dricus. So, if you think about it, it's very, very chaotic. And this is why I think the middleweight division is like the funnest division currently, because there's just so many characters. For some reason, the bigger guys tend to be the biggest characters, honestly. The tiny guys are just kind of annoying, like Henry Cejudo, or um, who's he fighting? What's his name? Marab. These tinier guys are just kind of annoying. They're like little chihuahuas, and you're just like, be quiet, And but then when you have the Paulo Costas and the Pereiras, these guys are really actually funny, and they can actually beat the crap out of you in a fight, and they're very intimidating. See, that's a different factor. Like Sean O'Malley, could he knock out a guy who's like 6 feet tall, 6'4" or something? Probably. But would he intimidate you before knocking you out? No. Like a lot of these bigger guys, they don't even need to prove anything. All they have to do is look at you, and they're like, oh, look at the muscle in that guy. And you're like he doesn't need to knock you out, right? But yeah, Robert is in a very interesting position, because if he loses, then he's going to have to really look at his whole career, especially if he gets finished. If he loses the same way that he lost to Dricus, then he's going to have to rethink his whole career, because it might be time to retire. And I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but these are high advanced athletes, and these guys, they're either number one or they're nothing. So he's not going to just stick around and just fight to fight. And I know we have fighters like that. You have Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje to a degree. You have Max Holloway. You have certain guys that are okay with being like in the top 5, and they're okay with not being the champ. Like you also have Kevin Holland, right? He knows that he's never going to be the champ. All he's doing is trying to get the money fights through his personality, and he's good enough that he could win fights and not be on a losing streak, but he's not good enough to beat the guys in the top 5 or even possibly top 10. So he's an interesting guy, but he does come at the idea that he's never going to be champion, and therefore he's just going to try to get the money fights, and he's going to get it through talking trash and his personality, which is a very, very interesting situation, because most people come into the sport because they want to be the best, and to be the best you have to be the champion, and that's usually the stereotypical like Mortal Kombat, work your way up the ladder kind of mindset. But he's actually come at it from a very realistic perspective on like he's probably not as good as the guys at the top. They would just eat him alive, like, Wonder Boy, took him apart. And then you got Cosma finishing him in like, what, a minute and a half. So he knows that he can't beat certain guys, but he is good though. So it's interesting. So I mean, Paulo Costa lands a left hook, to the liver, to the head. He lands a power shot on him. That might be the end of Robert Whittaker, because he doesn't look like the type of guy that's okay with being like, I'll just be number 5 for the next couple of years, and then I'll just quietly retire or something. I think he's the type of guy that if he gets finished, then he's going to take some time off, and then you might hear about his retirement, or maybe he might have a couple more fights, but with the idea if he just wants to finish on a good note. So either way, it would still be a retirement. Do I think that's going to happen? I mean, if I had to bet money, I would definitely bet on Robert Whittaker. We don't know what Paulo Costa looks like. I mean, his last fight was against Luke Rockhold, and, a lot of people will say Paulo Costa looked horrible in that fight, but at the same time, that was Luke Rockhold's last fight, and he gave everything he had in that fight. And of course, he is a former champion, WEC champion, and he's also a big, just strong dude. And he gave everything he had, like because of the elevation and all the suffering he was going through. You could see like he was throwing his demons, he was throwing his soul, he was throwing everything he had at Paulo Costa. So that was not like the typical Luke Rockhold that got finished by Michael Bisping. If Michael Bisping had fought that Luke Rockhold, I think he would have gotten taken out by some of those body kicks. And that's to say that Paulo Costa was able to body everything Luke Rockhold threw at him while being that desperate. When someone's back is up against the wall, they are a very dangerous being, no matter who they are, no matter how big they are, none of that. When they're back up against, like, you got the adrenaline pumping, those are the situations where women are able to pick cars off their kids and stuff like that. Those are the most dangerous people. And Paulo Costa was able to deal with that. He was able to eat all the shots and win the fight by decision. And we don't know what he looks like. I mean, how long has it been? A year or two since Paulo Costa fought? So, I mean, ring rust is a real thing. I was saying this during the Colby Covington fight, that he's not going to look the same because, in his first fight against Usman, he looked really good, right? He was beating him up. If not for the bad stoppage, he probably would have won that fight. And then in the second fight, after like a year off, you could clearly tell that he wasn't the same guy. Like, it took him. He didn't start looking like Colby until like maybe the 3rd round, almost 4th round, and that's when he started looking comfortable. But until then, he looked real stiff. He looked real slow. It's almost as if like you've never sparred before. That kind of like bad reactions. The punches are coming at you at the speed of a bullet. Like really, really bad. And so we're thinking like Paulo Costa's been off for a long time. Well, how's that going to affect him? Especially going up against Robert Whittaker, who has been busy. He's been in there. And, he got finished his last fight, but he was still looking pretty good before the finish. So it's like that ring rust is going to be huge. I mean, Paulo Costa does have a chin, and he does have a pretty good defense. So worst case scenario, I could see him, and he's kind of like in a way autistic enough to just do nothing in like the first 2 rounds and then go off on the last round, which would, be pretty crazy. But I don't know. If I had to give it to someone, I would definitely say Robert Whittaker on paper. I mean, what he did to Vettori, like, why wouldn't he be able to do that to Costa? I mean, Costa's style isn't that much different. I mean, he does hit hard. He does have power hooks and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's no different than kind of what Vettori was kind of throwing at him. And, Robert's used to dealing with these bigger dudes, and being the matador, right? These giant bulls are coming at him. And it didn't work his way with the Dricus fight, but he is intelligent enough to be able to pull it off against Costa. But again, he did get finished his last fight. He does kind of have a bad chin. In a ton of his fights, he does get hurt. So it's kind of a flip of a coin in some ways. Whichever whoever you want to bet on, I respect it honestly. If you go Costa or you go Whittaker, I could definitely see it. But you know the factors are definitely just kind of up in the air because if Costa lands something, and the interesting point is he also likes doing a lot of liver shots. He likes working the body, and that's something you don't see a lot of fighters do. Usually they headhunt or they kick the leg or something. But he goes for a lot of body shots. So Paulo Costa is able to get Whittaker up against the cage and then start working the body. That's not something that Whittaker is used to, honestly. He starts throwing some hooks on the body and starts hurting him. Next thing you know, he fakes low and goes high, and then he catches Whittaker's chin, and then you start seeing him do the man dance, right? So I don't know, but I do think ring rust is a huge factor. So I mean, you know, I guess you have to flip a coin on this, but definitely this is a important fight in the careers of Paulo Costa and Robert Whittaker. You know, if Paulo Costa is able to finish Whittaker, then he might be able. I mean, depending on early you know on like the next championship fight, like someone gets hurt, he's in shape, he could definitely get into a title shot like right there. Um, and he's in position for a ton of stuff. And then if Whittaker wins, then he would essentially, especially if he knocks out Paulo Costa, if he wins spectacularly, everyone will forget about the Dricus loss, and then he would be able to get back into title contention. If he stays in shape again and someone gets hurt or something, then he's right back in there. So this is really going to show where the middleweight division is going to go in the future. Is Whittaker still in the picture, and is Costa going to take from Whittaker? Is he going to take his light, his spotlight, and is he going to throw himself into the fire, into the top three, the top five in the middleweight division? Because he hasn't been there in a while. But honestly, I would like to see Costa win, because if he does, that would definitely throw another kind of like wedge into all this stuff, right? You got the Dricus drama, you got the Sean Strickland drama. We're hearing Izzy's coming back, so you got that drama. And then throw Paulo Costa in the middle of all that. And of course, Alex Pereira is, he still hints at coming back and stuff. So you have all of these characters all fighting each other. Oh man, it really is fun. Like, I really like this division. I like all the drama. It's fun. Let me know what you think of the middleweight division as well, and I'll see you guys on the next video.